Hello, welcome to Lesson 6 on animal farming. Today we'll discuss the topic of animal farming, focusing on environmental and ecosystem services of livestock systems, cultural and social roles of pastoralism, sustainable livestock management, and climate adoption. The goal is to understand the role of animal farming for a sustainable and multifunctional agriculture. Are you ready? Let's get started. So, before we start, what do you think the roles of animal farming are? As you can imagine, animal farming has a central role in multifunctional agriculture. Animal farming, in fact, plays a crucial role extending far beyond the production of meat, milk, or fiber. Within agroecological and sustainable agricultural landscapes, livestock contribute to the diversification of production systems, the closing of nutrient loops, and the provision of a range of ecosystem services. The multifunctionality of livestock also encompasses environmental, cultural, and social functions, especially in intensive and pastoral contexts, making them essential actors in the transition toward more resilient and sustainable food systems. So, livestock systems, particularly those based on extensive and integrated approaches, can deliver a wide array of ecosystem services. These include nutrient recycling, biodiversity conservation, water regulation, and landscape maintenance. Let's start from nutrient recycling. Animals recycle nutrients by consuming organic matter and returning it to the environment through excretion, death, and decomposition. This process involves both nutrient recycling, in which animals returns nutrients to the same habitat, and nutrient translocation, in which they move nutrients between habitats. Key animal groups involved include decomposers like earthworms and insects that break down that material, but also grazers like cattle and deer that consume plants and return nutrients via dung, and urine. When we talk about nutrient recycling, it's important to be aware of the carbon cycle. This is the natural process by which carbon atoms are exchanged between the atmosphere, oceans, land, and living organisms. It involves several key processes. Plants absorb atmospheric carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, which then moves to animals when they eat plants. Both plants and animals release carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere through respiration. When organisms die, decomposers return carbon to the soil. The cycle also includes slower geographical processes like the formation of fossil fuels and volcanic activities, as well as exchanges between the atmosphere and oceans. Human activities, primarily the burning of fossil fuels, have significantly accelerated the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, impacting the natural balance of the carbon cycle. Animals are part of the carbon cycle. They consume carbon from plants, release carbon dioxide through respiration, excretion, and waste, and return carbon to the environment upon death. Apart from carbon, another fundamental element is nitrogen. Nitrogen is essential for life, and as it is a building block for proteins and nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. The nitrogen cycle is a biogeochemical process that moves nitrogen between the atmosphere, soil, and living organisms. It involves key steps like nitrogen fixation, where atmospheric nitrogen is converted into usable forms like ammonia, nitrification, where ammonia is converted to nitrates, assimilation, where plants and animals take up these nitrogen compounds, ammonification, where decomposers return organic nitrogen to the soil, and denitrification, which converts nitrates back into nitrogen gas, returning it to the atmosphere. Now, closing nutrient cycles is one of the most important contributions of multifunctional livestock. In highly specialized agricultural systems, carbon and nitrogen flows are often disconnected. Crop production depends on synthetic fertilizers, while intensive livestock operations produce nutrient surpluses that concentrate pollutants in small areas. In contrast, mixed crop livestock systems can rebalance these cycles by reusing manure as organic fertilizers and using crop residues as animal feed, thereby enhancing both productivity and environmental sustainability. Livestock systems also support biodiversity conservation in agricultural landscapes. Managed pastures and meadows, especially those with rotational or extensive grazing, create heterogeneous vegetation structure that provides critical habitats for pollinators, ground nesting birds, and native flora. So, still on biodiversity conservation, we know that techniques such as patch burn grazing combine controlled burning and grazing to mimic natural disturbance patterns, maintaining habitat mosaics and enhancing species richnesses at the landscape level. So, what is patch burn grazing? The basic idea is that a portion of pasture is burned using prescribed fire, as you can see here in the figure. The subsequent regrowth attracts livestock to voluntarily concentrate their use on recently burned area, while other portions of the pasture receive rest from grazing. Another area of the pasture is then burned. Moving livestock use around the pasture and creating diversity in livestock forage resources, plant species, and wildlife habitat. Furthermore, well-managed livestock systems contribute to the resilience of agroecosystems under climate change. Biodiverse grazing lands containing a mixture of grasses, legumes, and forbs exhibit portfolio effects, where the presence of species with varied ecological responses buffers against climate extremes. This functional biodiversity stabilizes forage production across seasons, promoting long-term sustainability in pastoral systems. About landscape multifunctionality. Livestock also play a role in landscape multifunctionality by shaping cultural and ecological values. Their contribution to soil fertility, carbon sequestration, and habitat connectivity highlights their relevance not only as productive agents, but as key components in integrated multifunctional farming systems. Another important point of animal farming is the cultural and social roles of pastoralism. Livestock also play a role in landscape multifunctionality by shaping cultural and ecological values. Their contribution to soil fertility, carbon sequestration, and habitat connectivity highlights the relevance not only as productive agents, but as key components in integrated multifunctional systems. Pastoral social ecological systems are recognized as hotspots of both cultural and biological diversity. These practices associated with transhumance, rotational grazing, and seasonal movement patterns are central to how these communities have historically sustained livelihoods in marginal environments. These traditions have shaped cultural landscape and spiritual values while also enabling the sustainable use of extensive rangelands in arid and semi-arid regions. Crucially, the cultural identity of pastoral groups is intimately tied to livestock. Animals are not only sources of food, income, and materials like wool or hides, they are also woven into rituals, social status, and oral heritage. This deep bond between herders and their animals is reflected in songs, cosmologies, and knowledge systems that transmit ecological understanding across generations. Yet, pastoralism today faces major pressures. These include land fragmentation, centralization policies, climate change, and resource competition. So, for example, research competition from extractive industries or tourism. While often marginalized in policy discourses, there is growing recognition that pastoralism contributes significantly to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, including poverty reduction, food security, gender equality, and environmental stewardship. To maintain and enhance its multifunctional value, pastoralism must be supported through legal recognition of land tenure rights, including governance and investment in context-specific services such as mobile health and education. Furthermore, pastoralists should be empowered to diversify their livelihoods in culturally appropriated ways, for instance, by developing artisanal dairy products, engaging in ecotourism, or participating in payment for ecosystem service schemes. Protecting pastoralism as a cultural and social institution is not about preserving a romanticized past. Rather, it is about acknowledging its contemporary relevance and enabling its evolution in the face of changing socio-ecological conditions. Encouraging young generations to maintain or return to pastoral life requires not only economic incentives, but also cultural valorization and legal empowerment. Only through such measures can the vital cultural fabric of pastoral societies continue to flourish and contribute to sustainable development. Now, about sustainable management and climate adaptation. Sustainable livestock management is an increasingly critical component of climate adaptation strategies in multifunctional agriculture. Climate change poses significant risk to animal health, productivity, reproduction, and welfare, especially in regions where livestock systems are already vulnerable due to environmental or economic constraints. Rising temperatures, altered precipitation patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events challenge the viability of both intensive and extensive farming systems. However, with proper management, livestock farming can also become a driver of climate resilience and ecological sustainability. Climate-induced heat stress is one of the most direct and damaging effects on livestock, particularly dairy and beef cattle. As temperature rise beyond the thermoneutral zones, which typically are between 5 and 20 degrees Celsius degrees for European cattle, animals experience reduced feed intake, elevated transpiration rates, altered metabolic functions, and compromised reproductive performances. In dairy cows, milk yields decrease significantly for each unit increase in the temperature humidity index, with observed losses of up to 4.4 kilos per day under extreme stress conditions. So, as you can imagine, this is quite an issue for livestock farmers. Moreover, high temperature humidity index levels are linked to increased somatic cell counts and mastitis incidence, reflecting broader health and welfare impacts under heat stress conditions. To address these risks, livestock systems are increasingly adopting both adaptation and mitigation strategies, many of which are aligned with the principles of multifunctionality. These strategies range from infrastructural changes and nutritional adjustments to genetic selections and policy-level interventions. Environmental and housing interventions are among the most immediate and cost-effective ways to buffer livestock against heat stress. Well-designed shelters with proper orientation, natural ventilation, and shade structures can reduce the heat load by 30–40%. Innovations such as false ceilings, white painted roofs, and tree plantations around sheds further enhance cooling. Mechanical ventilation systems, sprinklers, and foggers, when properly adapted to local humidity levels, offer additional benefits in maintaining thermal comfort and improving productivity, although their cost effectiveness varies by region and system type. Nutritional interventions play a complementary role in improving animal resilience, providing highly digestible ratios, increasing dietary energy density, and supplementing with bypass fats, minerals, especially potassium, sodium, and magnesium, as well as vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin E, niacin, can offset the negative effects of reduced feed intake during heat stress. Strategic night grazing and minimizing animal movement during the hottest hours further help to maintain intake and animal well-being. Genetic and reproductive strategies also contribute to long-term climate adaptation. Indigenous and locally adapted breeds generally exhibit higher heat tolerance, disease resistance, and lower maintenance requirements compared to exotic breeds. Breeding programs that prioritize resilient traits such as thermal tolerance and feed efficiency offer a pathway to sustain productivity in the face of climate volatility. Additionally, reproductive interventions such as hormone synchronization and embryo transfer techniques have been shown to improve conception rates during high temperature periods. Beyond individual farm management, landscape-level adaptation is critical. Integrating livestock into silvopastoral or mixed farming systems increases system complexity and resilience. Such systems not only offer shade and improved forage quality, but also contribute to carbon sequestration, soil conservation, and biodiversity. Multifunctional outcomes that support both climate mitigation and rural sustainability. Regarding climate change emissions, we know that methane emissions from enteric fermentation and manure management represent a significant share of agriculture's climate footprint. Methane emissions from enteric fermentation occur in ruminant animals like cattle, sheep, and goats, as microbes in their digestive systems, especially in the rumen, ferment food producing methane as a byproduct. This process is a significant source of human-caused methane emissions, accounting for sorry, accounting for roughly 30% of the global total. These emissions also represent a loss of energy for the animal, anywhere from 2 to 12% of their energy intake. Methane is produced from manure management through aerobic decomposition, especially in wet storage systems. Factors like temperature, water content, and pH influence the rate of methane production. Now, regarding climate mitigation, livestock management also holds potential. Mitigation options include dietary manipulation, for example, increased use of concentrate, improved forage quality, and legume-based fodder. The use of methane-reducing feed additives like tannins, oils, propionate precursors, and improved manure handling. Some interventions like optimizing silage practices have shown methane reduction potential of 15–32% in controlled trials. At the policy level, supporting multifunctional livestock systems requires integrated governance framework that align environmental, animal welfare, and development goals. These include recognizing livestock contribution to ecosystem services, supporting climate adaptive infrastructure and breeds, and promoting knowledge transfer among farmers. Innovations such as Livestock Safe Monitor, a real-time heat stress forecasting tool, demonstrate how technology can be integrated into management decisions to safeguard animal welfare and productivity. In conclusion, sustainable livestock management is not only about mitigating climate-related risks, but it is also about leveraging the multifunctional potential of animal systems to contribute to food security, climate regulation, ecosystem health, and rural livelihoods. By adopting an integrated multifunctional approach, livestock systems can evolve from being part of the climate problem to becoming part of the solution. Before concluding this lesson, I have quite some questions for you. I will read them to you one by one. You can pause the video and answer them. So, how does animal farming contribute to multifunctional agriculture beyond producing meat, milk, or fiber? What environmental benefits do extensive and integrated livestock systems offer? Why do managed grazing practices such as rotational grazing or patch-burning grazing enhance biodiversity? How do biodiverse grazing lands improve the resilience of livestock systems under climate change? Why is pastoralism considered both a cultural and social system, not just a production method? More questions. What pressures threaten traditional pastoralism today, and how can policy help address them? What climate-related risks affect livestock, and why is sustainable management essential for adaptation? Which structural and environmental interventions can reduce heat stress in livestock? How do nutritional, genetic, and reproductive strategies increase livestock resilience to extreme climates? How do silvopastoral agroecological systems support both climate mitigation and adaptation in livestock farming? Once you're ready, we can move to the answers. So let's look at the answers together. How does animal farming contribute to multifunctional agriculture? Well, it does it because supports diversified production systems, closes nutrient cycles, and provide ecosystem services. Then, what environmental benefits do extensive and integrated livestock systems offer? They recycle nutrients through manure use, maintain heterogeneous pasture, regulate water flows, and help sustain resilient agricultural landscapes. Why do managed grazing practices such as rotational grazing or patch-burn grazing enhance biodiversity? Because they create varied vegetation structure and disturbance pattern that offer habitats for different animals and plant species. How do biodiverse grazing lands improve the resilience of livestock systems under climate change? So a mixture of grasses, legumes, and forbs provides functional diversity, ensuring stable forage production across seasons and buffering against climate variability. Why is pastoralism considered both a cultural and social system? Because pastoral communities maintain deep historical bonds with livestock, expressed through rituals, oral traditions, ecological knowledge, and social structures that define group identity. What pressures threaten traditional pastoralisms today, and how can policy help address them? Land fragmentation, climate change, sedentarization policies, and resource competition undermine pastoral systems. Supportive policies can strengthen land tenure rights, governance, and access to mobile services. What climate-related risks affect livestock and why is sustainable management essential for adaptation? Well, heat stress, reduced feed intake, milk yield, reproductive performance, and animal welfare, and sustainable management helps animal copes with these issues, enhancing system resilience. A few more answers. Why structural environmental interventions can reduce heat stress in livestock? Shade structure, natural ventilation, tree planting, cooling systems like sprinklers or fans, and improve housing design or lower heat loads and support animal well-being. How do nutritional, genetic, and reproductive strategy increase livestock resilience to extreme climates? High digestibility diets, mineral supplements, heat-tolerant breeds, and reproductive techniques help maintain productivity and health under stressful conditions. Last, how do silvopastoral and agroecological systems support both climate mitigation and adaptation? They provide shade and diverse forage for animals, enhance carbon sequestration, conserve soil and biodiversity, and create more complex and resilient landscape that reinforce multifunctional sustainability. So this is all for now. Thank you for listening to this lesson and keep learning. Don't miss the next lesson to continue discovering the many aspects of multifunctionality in agriculture. There is still much to learn and you certainly don't want to miss this opportunity.